friends. This is Informed Dissent, and here is your news of the week for December 13th, 2025. This week, the Department of Justice moved to intervene in a lawsuit against Loudoun County Public Schools after two male students were punished for objecting to a female using their locker room. The DOJ argues the school violated the students' constitutional rights by treating statements of biological reality as harassment, signaling a major shift in how the federal government is approaching gender identity policies in schools. In Texas, prosecutors charged two doctors with Medicaid fraud for billing gender transition medical treatments for minors to the state. It's the first criminal case of its kind in the U.S., and it sharply raises the legal stakes for clinics providing youth gender medicine, especially when public insurance is involved. In women's sports, number one female tennis player Arina Sabalenka called the Women's Tennis Association's trans policy unfair, saying male bodies retain biological advantages over women. Her comments came as organizers of an exhibition match quietly adjusted the rules to compensate for those very advantages. Internationally, New Zealand announced it will halt new prescriptions of puberty blockers for adolescents with gender dysphoria, citing, surprise, surprise, weak evidence. The move places New Zealand along a growing number of countries stepping away from the American approach and towards medical caution. A quick reminder this week on Informed Dissent, we're joined by Alasdair Gunn for a wide-ranging conversation on evidence activism and what families around the world are experiencing. And before we go, a little housekeeping. We're taking December 27th off. Does the news ever quit? Absolutely not. But our deeply underpaid and in some cases completely unpaid volunteers have officially demanded at least one day off this year, and we're going to honor that. Winter is here. Jamie has already ordered her 2026 calendar, which we're told is about the size of a brick, and apparently everyone is digging in for what's ahead. That's your news for the week. On to the show.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Informed Dissent. Your three hosts this week are myself, Corey Cohn, a gentleman of trans experience, Jamie Reed, a courageous whistleblower coming from a gender clinic who has given us a view from behind the scenes, and Lauren Laguerre, a lesbian activist and all-around mensch who is the co-director with Jamie of the Courage Coalition. And with us this week is Alasdair Gunn, who is a gentleman who's been involved in trying to change the landscape on gender care for children. He is a former leader in the GenSpect organization and is an author. He created the iconic series on the boys that were being influenced by the gender pathways that was published in Quillette. And he is here to talk with us today. Welcome, Alasdair.
Thank you very much. I'm a gentleman of counter-trans experience.
Yes.
How does that sound?
Well, you've been doing a lot to try to shed light on what's actually happening and to try to discriminate between the popular stories, the mythology that has permeated our culture and the truth behind it.
Yeah, maybe. I think you might have used the wrong idea. Well, I hope I did something. I'm not sure have been doing. That's a bit optimistic. I'm not sure I've done anything recently, but yes. So I think like a lot of people, it's a COVID story. I kind of fell backwards into this because I lost my work. And in Ireland, where I am, we got very generous weekly payments of like $300 to do basically nothing for COVID, which was lovely. So I watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos, as you do, and one of them was Benjamin Boyce interviewing the mother of an ROGD girl. And that's what started the whole thing off. And I, from there, kind of just fell down the rabbit hole of watching more and more videos. I think the next thing I saw was Sinead. And I remember that. And I remember
Sinead Watson.
Sinead Watson being interviewed by Benjamin Boyce. And as soon as the interview was over, I literally just went back to the beginning and watched the whole thing again. I was like mesmerized. Like, how is this? How did they say yes to this? Because like this is obviously somebody who's two things, like one, really, really struggling with addiction and all these other things, as she said, but then also two, really obviously salvageable. Like, we're not talking about somebody who's kind of, the 61-year-old alcoholic where you kind of think, oh, is there any point in investing any time in all the, like, how did they sign off on this when it's somebody so young who obviously is in such a state? So then I kind of, from there, I
Can I just ask, what was your familiar out like how familiar were you with trans at all before that?
not at all. I knew that there was a guy. I went to university in Manchester, and there's a guy, very famous guy, who walks up and down Oxford Road dressed in a certain manner. Is quite famous, quite old. Um, I'd been served in John Lewis by somebody who had beautiful nails, and then said, "There you go, love." And I looked up and thought, oh, Jesus. And that was it. That was it. I don't think I'd had any other experience other than very obvious cross dressers. I didn't know that there were women who had taken testosterone. I literally didn't know that at all. So the first video I saw with Benjamin Boyce with this woman, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know there were women who wanted to do that.
Can we lay some framework though? So you're gay man.
Yes.
Um, I don't know your age, but I'm
I'm
right,
27, 43.
I'm right at the end of Gen X. I think we've talked about this a little bit because we've established that Lauren is the oldest. Um, and
So I'm 43, so I'm technically a millennial, just clinging to the world.
okay, but growing up in the gay community, trans was not.
No, it was kind of a thing at university, but I was never a politic. I didn't really do anything like that. I didn't particularly go on any marches. If I went to the gay village, which is great in Manchester, there's a really big gay village, but it's for dancing and drinking and flirting. It's not, for me at least, I didn't see any of the political stuff particularly. I'm sure it was all going on, but I wasn't terribly interested. So I never joined an LGBT organization, but it certainly wasn't like because I had some prescient knowledge that there was some kind of clash in these concepts or anything of the sort. I didn't really problematize it or think about it, you know?
So then you get brought in COVID
Yeah.
and you're in Ireland
Yeah.
and you became a pretty early powerful voice. And what I think is really interesting is when we talked to our production team that you were coming on, there were two very different responses. One person, and I'll be completely honest, was like, I don't know who you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
And the other person was, oh my gosh, this is one of the key thinkers who helped me understand my child. It was such this different response of who are
First
you?
one's correct. The first one's correct. I'm not important at all, but I think that what I wrote was timely. So for context, I wrote this series in Quillette called When Sons Become Daughters. I didn't name it. Because you never name these things. You have to negotiate that. And at that time, it was when I started writing that, Irreversible Damage had been out, like I want to say like 4 or 5 months. And that's, of course, about females and only really about females. So I kind of, in my arrogance, thought, oh, I can do like a male mini version. And I would never say, because what Abigail did is an entire book. She did a huge amount of research, and what I was doing was a lot smaller. But the parents wanted somebody to do something about the boys specifically, um, which I came under pressure not to do because people don't want to write about boys.
Why do you think that is?
This
Well,
could
let's just go
escalate
right to
quickly,
the heart of
Lauren.
it.
This could escalate quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that there are lots of reasons, but I think that this was 2020. I started writing Christmas Eve 2020. So I think, fundamentally back then, when so many fewer people knew about this, it's just, there's no question in terms of the sympathy. Like, if you want to put forward somebody who's like a sympathetic, look what we're doing.
Yeah.
it kind of is self-evident. But the problem is that they're different phenomena, and then they're also connected. And so this is what you get. So the parents kind of coming in and saying, we want somebody to talk about ROGD in boys. And a lot of people hear that as denialism of the sexual component. Do you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
as soon as you say, I want to write specifically about the boys, there'll be people who say, like, oh, no, 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 make it general, because it feels safer, you know?
You were probably then one of the early to notice that something was going wrong specifically with the boys. Um, what do you feel like you saw before it was widely acknowledged? Were there patterns? Was there something that you just felt connection with? Um,
It's oh gosh, it's a lot. It's kind of a big salad to untoss. Um, I mean, there are certainly lots of so their parents. So to clarify, I never met any of the boys. I met their parents, which basically means their mothers. Two cases, their fathers. There are certainly patterns that have emerged, like where there is commonality with what these girls are going through, like in terms of massive overrepresentation of eating disorders and all of this kind of stuff. So there's definitely that. Um, I suppose. So, I mean, I had my own sort of adolescent experience, which I would call dysmorphia, very, very quite severe, but very sharp. It was only like 4 months, 5 months. And I know why it happened. It was kind of very contained episode. And I didn't link that at all with this because I just thought this was a separate thing. It's trans. I don't know anything about it. It's trans. And of course, the more you learn about it, the more you realize what they're doing to these kids is they're kind of exploiting all sorts of things which people just born 10, 20 years earlier would say, you would have got me. And there's something meaningful in there. There's something really meaningful in there. So I think as I learned about it, I realized, oh, I would have been one of these. I would have jumped on this, I think, probably. Um, but I didn't go into it thinking that at all. More fool me because I should have really. I should have had the foresight to look at it, but I didn't. I just thought it's a completely discrete thing and nothing to do with sexuality. And of course, it is to do with sexuality because they're misdirecting. In so many cases, they're misdirecting their homosexuality into a gender identity, right? So there were lots of patterns that their parents wished to emphasize. Um, and what I wrote, I genuinely felt and believed that I was dealing with a group of people who had been kind of insulted and silenced and disregarded from all sorts of different directions, and that I should put forward their viewpoint, essentially, and that the arguments that they wished to make, which is a bit complicated because then if I write that, it's like I did not write something for Quillette called Everything I Think You Need to Know About Transgender Identification in Men. I would not do that. It was the arguments that they wanted to make. So it's kind of, I don't know, embedded journalism, which has its risks, right? I was not neutral. And I was clear that I'm not neutral.
so I want to jump,
Mhm.
and then I think we're going to make the jump, and then it'll come back in a circle. So this was kind of your initial foray. Help me out here.
Hooray?
Foray. Um, you write this piece, you're kind of in the movement or, a voice, a name or a voice. And then something happened to you that was very personal.
Yeah, I got sick.
And you received a really significant cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed. I had pain. I assumed stupidly, I sort of thought it was stress, uh, and then finally things got. It's a long story, but so I went into hospital. There's a really big problem in Ireland, as there is in the UK, with emergency care. So I was told you have to stay here at the side of a hospital corridor for 4 days on a trolley before we'll be able to see you. So I did 2 days, and then I was like, I'm out. I can't do it. It was really bad because it was mixed sex, and they were like, there was a guy trying to get heroin off
Wait,
nurses.
wait. You laid in a hallway,
Yeah, on a stretcher, not on the floor.
but
They
on a
had
stretcher in the hallway for 2 days in pain.
Yeah, I mean, they treated it, but they didn't treat it very well because they're just doing triage, essentially. It's a really big problem. And so in the end, I walked out because after 2 days, and they came to me and they were like, it was Saturday night, and they said, we're not going to be able to give you a CT until Monday. And I was thinking, all the drunks are about to come in. Like, it's 5 p.m. on a Saturday. We're already like at capacity. I couldn't take my clothes off because there were women. Like, it's like a utility corridor, right? It's like the kind of heating corridor that they've just ended up, or whatever, going into some kind of overflow. It's really crazy. So I left, I walked out, and then eventually the one thing they did manage to do when I was in there is they gave me an X-ray at the very least, and then they called me when I got home and said, you need to come back in. And so I was diagnosed with stage 3 uh, colon cancer, and I was prescribed a course of chemotherapy. And so I had my first dose of chemotherapy, and 4 days after that, I had a heart attack, which can be accelerated by chemotherapy. I wouldn't want to say caused because it makes it sound like I was gleefully skipping through life with my, low-fat yogurts and all the rest of it. And suddenly I had an inexplicable heart attack. That's not what happened, but it probably did accelerate it. I probably wouldn't have had a heart attack that day. So the chemotherapy had to be stopped. And then what happened is that the cancer metastasized, so it spread to 5 different parts of my body. So I had tumors as far up as my neck and as far down as my bowel. And then I was prescribed immunotherapy, which only 25% of people in my case are eligible for. And for 8% of those, which is thus 2%, it can get rid of all of your cancer. And that's what happened. Now I say that's what happened, just, passing over the 2 years in the middle. So that was kind of, so you have to every 3 months you have to have a scan and you have to see, and they show you the results. And in my case, it'll be different for everyone, but in my case, if it had started growing again, that was it. There was nothing. I had to get it down to 0. And for mathematicians, I don't know what, maybe Corey, you'll know because you're quite good at this kind of stuff, but there's a diminishing return, but like the curve that kind of goes down and it's not suddenly going to get any better. The best gains you get are at the beginning of the process, the best shrinkage in the tumor. And every scan, you're not going to get as much shrinkage in the tumor or tumors as the last scan. So you're kind of just trying to get down to 0, trying to do everything you can to get down to 0, basically.
So can I ask this particular treatment, would you call it experimental in any way?
Oh, yes, it is experimental. It was explained to me. She said, have you ever heard of off-label? I was like, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I've heard of off-label because I just started
yeah.
doing all of this stuff about the off-label usage of puberty blockers and all the rest of it. So it was really interesting then because it was an experiment. And because I had good healthcare, it was actually explained to me, you can't sue. There is so in my case, this drug is called pembrolizumab. Pembrolizumab had an 8, as best we can tell, an 8% chance of getting rid of all of my tumors and a 10% chance of giving me diabetes. So it was more likely to give me
You
diabetes.
went from this mindset of being, I would almost say, like skeptical or hesitant around these medical interventions you knew that were going on for kids to being completely dependent.
Yes. Yeah, but at no point did I ever think when I saw any of this, oh, the whole of medicine is it was always really clear to me that this is siloed and that these people are just working in their own logic and that no one else really knows. And do you know what I mean? No one else in the health industry knows. Or that's
I
what I
do,
thought.
but there are so many people now in this who I hear will say, like, I will never trust doctors again.
Well, okay, get back to me when you need a CAT scan. We'll see. We'll see if you'll never trust doctors again. There might be people who say that and genuinely mean that. And I think if their own bodies have been damaged by this, and I think in particular if their kids' bodies have been damaged by this, well, then that I would take very seriously and heavily. But I think it's very easy to say, oh, I wouldn't trust doctors. And it's like, okay, but when you actually, if I'd said no to this, then it would have been, okay, so it's a 100% chance I need to think about my funeral, not 92%. And when that's in front of you, one of the things I learned is you have no idea who you are. You've got no idea who you are. I asked her, how likely is this to work, my clinician? And she kind of said, well, what do you mean by work? Because obviously you want to know, am I going to die? And the answer to that is yes, you're going to die. You're not immortal. At some point you're going to die. So then you want to know when, right? And I didn't know when I said, like, how likely is this to work? I didn't have a number in my head. Like, oh, if she says it's less than X%, then I'm out. And I now know myself. I know what that number is. I would have been completely wrong. If you'd said to me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, okay, so you have a terminal illness diagnosis, there's a treatment, it'll take 2 years to work out, will it work? 10% chance it gives you diabetes, 8% chance it works to get rid of all of your tumors. I'd have said, nah, I'd just party. And I've learned about myself that I now know what that number was, and it's any number which isn't zero. I will, if you told me there's a 1 in a million chance I'll survive, apparently I'll fight for it, which is not how I would thought of myself at all, to be honest.
You mentioned something about that consent piece that, she said, about off-label use. Do you feel like that factors differently, having lived through that for adults versus kids versus being a parent making that decision for your kid? Do you feel like you were able to grasp what you were consenting to?
Well, yeah, because bear in mind, before that, I had a chemotherapy and I had a good clinician, and she said, here's a list of things that can go wrong. And one of the things she said is heart attack, but it's very unlikely to happen. She did tell me.
And then you had a heart attack.
And then I had a heart attack. And then she came because it was in the same hospital where I was taken to cardiac care, because you have to be in cardiac care. It's very intense. They have to try and keep you alive. And she came to visit me. And I love her. I just love her. I think she's amazing. So I don't know, but back then, did she know me so well? So she might have been coming up thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he's going to blame me. He's going to blame me. And actually, I'm the kind of person, I understand mathematics. I understand if you say to me, there's a 1 in 5,000 chance, that's not the same thing as saying it won't happen, right? Because somebody's got to be the one in whatever, for whatever number it is, right? So, yeah.
Did this whole experience, though, did it kind of, I think the good that you took out of it was like, you can't distrust all the doctors. There are some redeeming qualities of Western medicine, but you must be making some parallels, right? Because what you were dealing with actually is life-threatening. But the thing is, these kids are being told, number one, they're not being told it's experimental. They're being told there's a 99.9% chance it's going to work, right?
Right.
But number two, they're in the same mindset as you were in, thinking
It's life or
that
death.
I have a terminal illness or a terminal deficiency, but if I do not treat it, it leads in death. It's certain death.
I don't know if the kids think that. I don't know if the kids, I think the parents are told that, or at least
But it's how the medical establishment treats it.
But I think the really important thing is, okay, well, the point, it's not true. We all know that that's not true. I'm sure everyone watching this knows it's not true. It is really quite, because I've had problems in the past with my mental health, quite a long time ago now, but various quite serious problems. I've never had to go into a mental hospital, but I've not been well and felt very, devoid of hope and anything like that. And it's really like that feeling is not the same as, so you're right, they are being told that, and it's being presented in society as like that, and it's profoundly insulting to people with cancer when somebody comes along and says, oh, this is like how I'll kill myself unless you do the things. No, it's not. The tumor is
Well,
not.
I think what you just said too is that there is a profound difference between facing actual mortality, between facing a difficult circumstance and feeling sad or uneasy about it, and there's a difference between that and what it feels like to be clinically depressed.
Yes, and I think the other thing to say is that so you had me kind of thinking,
but people don't realize that there's a difference while they're depressed.
No, people don't realize that.
The problem.
like there might be people out there who say, no, I'm really I really genuinely believe I'm at risk of suicide unless certain things happen to do with my gender presentation or whatever they want to call it. Okay, so that's fake, and they don't actually have any real experience of facing death in a way that those who have a terminal diagnosis actually really do have to do that. But it doesn't mean that they're happier and that they're faking being sad or angry.
Right.
Because I wasn't like
Right.
sad or angry for the whole 2 years. I had some good times in that 2 years of dealing with like mortal fear and all the rest of it. So I think people can hear it if you say this and they hear it as like, okay, so actually you're fine and this is all pretending. And I think that these people can be very, very unhappy and distressed. The thing that's frustrating about it is like, you can stop at any time. You can just stop. I can't stop a tumor, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you
Yeah.
can, if you understand it truly, I know they can't see it in that way, but they can it.
Yeah, they can't see it in that way, but then the entire medical establishment is geared towards um kind of aiding and abetting their delusion, right? Like they do have all these symptoms, and it would be medically responsible for someone to say, well, there's a difference here. But nobody's doing that.
No, and there's that experiment, I can't remember what it's called. Is it the Ash experiment, where they show like they have 9 actors pretending to be members of the public and then one real person, and they show them different lines and say which line is wrong longer, and the nine
Oh,
actors like, it's
yes,
the
yes,
wrong answer.
yes.
And then you have the one person who's left, and it turns out it's like only 30% of people will actually say the emperor has no clothes, you're all wrong. And I do think
Yeah.
that you're up again, particularly within like political parties and stuff like this, when somebody says, well, my trans son would be dead if it weren't for gender affirming care, you've got to have a certain level of knowledge and you've got to have a certain strength of character to deal with that in a way which doesn't just cause a bloodbath, right? If you're actually going to take that on, like, what do you do if you're in an organization, a company, and it's trying to come up with a policy, and somebody says, oh, we need to make sure there's no transphobia, and you kind of come in to say, hold on a minute, we need to think quite carefully about that. And what you're met with is, you're the kind of person who killed my friend's dead trans son. You've got to be really quite low in agreeableness, which I am,
Yeah.
to, right? I mean, probably all of us are in some sense.
Yeah.
So basically, nobody should do what Governor Newsom did today, which is tweet, correct, we're sorry, your daughter hates you, Elon, in response to your.
Yes, I don't think that was a
Um,
wise
can
move.
I ask a question I mean, clearly you don't have to answer, but was fertility discussed at all in terms of chemotherapies or any of those
Yeah, I
inter.
think briefly, but it's like I'm there with my gay other half and we're in our 40s. And so I think she probably said it and I went, yeah, it's fine, move on. Do you know what I mean? Like facial expression and all the rest of it. But yeah, that would have been in there. The main one was diabetes because that's a major risk. But then also, I mean, the thing about MABs is they don't, which is the name of the drug, the family of drugs are called MABs. They don't know. So they can't even run you through all of the things because it's kind of a
Because
bleak
they don't
hope.
know 80 years out what.
They don't even know 2 months out because it can the bleak joke is it can give you anything which ends in itis. Anything where your body is turning on itself,
Okay.
immunotherapy can trigger. Because what you're doing is it's like giving a ton load of cocaine to a bouncer and saying the local police have gone on strike. Have fun, right? Your immune system is walking around going like, I'm gonna kill everything. So it's trying to find all sorts of things within your body which are actually you, right? Because that's what cancer is, it's you. And
Yes.
so it's
You with the
training you.
gas pedal on and the brake line's been cut.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a strange kind of thing. So really you're being asked to consent to the unknown. Basically we don't know what this could do. We really don't know. And the other thing is that technically you're not taking it for the purposes it was designed. Because why was it designed? It was designed for people on a clinical trial, which means they're up against a whole bunch of other people who are probably on a placebo. Thank God I didn't have that. Now the plus side, if you're on a clinical trial, if something goes wrong, they'll, you could in theory sue them. I don't know. Probably you sign away that rights. I don't know. Well, there are plus sides to being in a clinical trial that you're being monitored. So I got these drugs on compassionate grounds. Basically, is who paid for them is the Irish state on compassionate grounds. So in terms of consent, it's you sort of have to decide either I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. Um, but you have to be informed. And the diabetes thing was really big. I had to really think about that because it's like, if this goes wrong for the rest of my life, however short that is, I'm in hospital, whatever it is, once every 2 weeks to have all of my blood washed. Like, that's a big thing, you know? So I had to think about that.
Alasdair, did you see the story that was in the New York Times last week about
Doubtlessly not.
what's that?
Doubtlessly not, because I don't read the New York
Doubtlessly
Times.
not. It was about a patient. We covered it here on the podcast. It was about a
Oh,
patient
yeah.
who had terminal cancer diagnosis,
Mm.
and he was suing his hospital because he during one of these procedures he snuck in a device to record the doctors as they were operating. And
In
he's
surgery, for cancer surgery.
right, and he's trans identified, and this profile in the New York Times had quoted him as so he had already received his diagnosis, and what was the most important thing to him? Sorry, that's
The cat.
background noise. The most important thing to him is that he had facial feminization surgery so that he could leave a beautiful corpse uh, with a likelihood that he was not going to be able to survive the treatment.
Um, I mean,
So I
again,
wanted to ask, did you have any cosmetic surgeries as you were facing death?
yeah, that was top of my mind. I
Yeah.
mean, it does kind of make you realize it is a great leveler because different people respond in different ways, and you do realize, okay, some people are just quite shallow, you know, and not, and that if that's your response to it, that you want to be a beautiful corpse, it's a bit beyond me. I can't think why, because corpses don't last that long, aside from anything else. It's only going to rot, you know. But I think it shows. I mean, an awful lot of this is very superficial stuff, right? And because I think a lot of the people who are bound up in all of this, they might be quite smart. And so they can sort of intellectualize very vapid, shallow, superficial cosmetic stuff and put a whole bunch of really complicated words around that. And it's like, okay, but you're still just obsessed with how you look, you know? So there's a bit of that in there.
You think that maybe I know you didn't read the piece and you don't know who this person is, but do you think maybe from your own experiences that there were some maybe this is a form of bargaining or denial of if I can make these self improvements, then that will make the illness go away?
I wouldn't want to speculate. I mean, I suppose if
Yeah.
somebody's really wanted to do that for the whole of their life, then I can see that a terminal diagnosis would sort of make you feel like you need to accelerate.
Mm.
Um, it's an odd response. And it kind of shows that a lot of this is just rumination, right? It's kind of like ruminative. Grass is always greener on the other side. So you get terminal diagnosis and you're like, this is the thing I need to do. But people respond very differently. And I don't think you, like I said, I don't think you know how you would respond
Until you're in it.
until you're in it. Yeah, kind of.
So coming out from the other, I mean, coming out through that, you're on the other side of this. And I feel like, and correct me if you don't feel like this happened, do you feel like you stepped away from gender? You went and you lived through this experience of your life, and now we've plopped you. You're just kind of an interesting case where you were like around and then you disappeared, and then we plopped you right back down in the middle of 2025. Like,
Well,
what
I'm
has
still,
happened in the gender world?
yeah, no, I mean, I'm still sort of like watching and seeing everything. And I think it's very, very different. Very, very different from 2020. It's so different.
What do you see? I want to see it from your eyes. Like
Okay,
what
well, I'll tell you an anecdote about my mother, which will clarify my position, which is that my mother, but the last general election, my mother walked up to the parliamentary prospective candidate for the Labour Party who was canvassing in public, and she said, "Are you the Labour candidate?" And he said, "Yes." And my mother said, "You're a failure on borders and a failure on bathrooms," which is very her. And he said, "People in public life have a right not to be attacked, madam. Now, I don't want to say how old my mother is, but you're not going to dodge out of her way because you think, this Amazonian athlete. I mean, she's old enough to be my mother. Um, and I'm telling that story because when I first started writing about this, if a journalist or a politician said something that was kind of even slightly skeptical about the transgenderism phenomenon, it was so everyone stopped what they were doing, was like went and looked. And now every politician, they're all wrong. They're not all wrong. They're nearly all wrong, but they know. They know that this is here, that this is an issue. They've all been given a party line. They all know that there are factions within their parties that think this or think that. Right. So it's really different because in 2020, basically nobody knew what was going on. And now I think almost everyone knows this is a really big shibboleth issue, you know? So that's completely changed.
Okay. I want to pivot back to the boys
Mhm.
and where we started a little bit. Um, I don't know how to frame this. So you've seen this movement change and you've seen the politicians come along, and we're at this point where, puberty blockers have been banned in the UK. There's talk of a trial. We've seen all of these different systematic reviews.
Mhm.
Do you think that we have come to a better place where we're actually serving the people who have been most damaged?
Who's we?
Oh.
Because I wouldn't, because if we means me, well, I'm not sure I've done anything recently. Do you mean us as a collective, as a society, like these people are being better treated? Is that what you're driving at?
I just I wonder every day, I feel like there's these two realms. There's the we're trying to stop more harm, more people, more, and then there's the people who've been harmed. And I think when you were first in this, you were in this dialogue with so many parents whose kids were being harmed, right? I mean, these were kids who were,
Or they were, I mean, the average age of the boy that I wrote about was 17 point something small years old. So a lot of it was about they were about to launch out of the house and become adults and do their thing as adults, and the parents were
so
desperate.
now fast forward 3, 4 years. Do we think that those young people, from what we see, are they doing okay right now?
Well, one of the boys whose mothers I wrote about died by suicide, tragically. So he's not. Um, I don't think. I don't know. It's very, very difficult because you're trying to help people who hate you. How do you do that, right? Because they kind of hate us until they realize, unless and until they realize this is a mistake, and then they realize what we were saying was not bigotry.
But even then, so they hate us, but then even once they realize, I still feel like there's still anger. There's still so much unresolved anger and hatred, and then it's just they don't even know where to direct it.
Yeah. Yes. I don't necessarily see that as a thing that's restricted to gender, to the trans thing. I think we're kind of living in an angry age anyway. I think that the rise of social media, we're living through a unique moment and we need to calibrate around this. And there's no rule book. We didn't design it, it evolved. It is what it is, and we're working our way through it. So there's that in there. But I mean, I also think like I can't stop somebody being lividly angry with his dad. Do you know? I can try and or whomever, I can try and pave the way to more interesting conversations and useful ways of looking at that if I'm in a position where that's possible and feasible, if I'm a friend or if I'm somebody who's paid to help. But you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I'm not sure that there's much, I'm not sure that anyone can put that weight upon herself in this case to say, we need to, like, how do we help these people who've been hurt? I mean, it doesn't help them to stop more people, this happening to more people, but it's a morally good thing anyway. And then you push for extension to the statute of limitations. Beyond that, I think, like in terms of what you're talking about, which is much more real and spiritual, I'm not sure that there's much that you can do.
So initially you went to start talking about the boys.
Yeah.
Do you think that that conversation about the boys has evolved? Has it grown up? I, I think you also mentioned that there's like a that the boys, the sympathy for the boys is
Well,
very
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even restrict that point to the boys. I would say that this is more general, but that in 2020, nobody knew about this. So if you went to somebody, even on the right of politics, and said, look at what's happening, this is medical malpractice, and they would say, yeah, that's awful. And now, with every year, there's more and more stories about how, like, there's chaos in schools, women are losing employment opportunities, and various other things. People have been constructively dismissed, women can't win, that there's a social cost of saying, "Oh, I think we need to think about these people's health," because somebody will turn around and say, "Well, whose side are you on?" Right? And there's a social cost, I think, then in particular, that it's more so with being seen to be kind of sympathizing with men who are ruining society. Now, the answer to that is, if you believe something is medical malpractice, then you believe it should be stopped no matter what, and no matter for whom. Um, But I think there's a sympathy slope in the sense that every day that we go on, it's going to be harder and harder because more and more people have seen the damage which has been done. And more people are, and this is a good thing, I think, becoming aware that in men, transvestism is linked to is more connected to criminal sexuality. It's not a sign of, but it's more connected. And so as more and more people are aware of that and they're aware of the motivations behind certain types of behavior that trans-identified men are getting up to in public, then saying, hey, this is a welfare thing, we need to protect these people from themselves, is not a popular argument. It doesn't become wrong. Um, because if something is medical malpractice, then it shouldn't matter whether you're, criminal mastermind or whoever you are, you just shouldn't be able to be put through it. So I think we've kind of slightly lost track or lost sense of that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, but also I can't help thinking about what you just said about social media. Like everything in our culture is geared around visual, right? And we're the people who are seeing these incursions into women's sports and the men and women's locker rooms and the people the more unsavory characters. These are all adult men who don't pass. So they're not seeing the puberty blocked boys.
I think that's a very good point about the puberty block boys because anyone who says, "Oh, I can always tell,"
Right.
you
They
want to meet
exactly.
one of these puberty blocked kids of either sex, I
You
really wouldn't die on the hill if I can always tell because
no. I mean,
I know men are worse at that, but I've heard many women say that as well. Like if they've been puberty blocked, it's there are signs, but you really need to look. Yeah, yeah,
and
it's
so it's very hard to evoke sympathy for something you're not able to see or spot in the world, right? Like
well, and I
even
also
this Supreme Court case we're having that's coming up um, about women's sports, there were two cases, and one was a puberty blocked boy, and one was an adult, not puberty blocked young man who wants to play on the women's team. And the ACLU wanted to drop the case of the man who was visibly trans because they know that this puberty block boy is going to come in and people are confused enough as it is, and they're going to see this. What they see is going to be, it looks like a young girl.
which is how it's easier then because he does still have advantages. He still has skeletal advantages. He still has all sorts of advantages, but you're
Right.
kind of throwing a blanket over them. You're making them very difficult to see.
Yeah.
Then also, you can't mention it without insulting him and his parents coming in and saying this is terrible and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But regardless, these boys that look the part, most of them have been harmed to a greater degree than these adult men who are showing up in women's locker rooms.
Yeah. And the problem is that the pain isn't over yet because they've been told It's fine. There's just this what am I trying to say? This handful of old bigots. They're nearly all Scottish. Don't worry, they'll be dead soon. You'll be fine. And of course, that's not true. So their
Yeah,
pain is not yet over because they now have to go through learning that actually society doesn't broadly accept this. There's just no evidence that it does, and there's quite a lot of evidence to the contrary. Then they're going to have to work out, wait, did my parents know that? Not
right.
know that?
And how do I move forward? Because if they are puberty blocked and put on cross-sex hormones at a young enough age, a lot of these kids, like you said, we are not going to be able to tell the difference. And I am afraid that we're going to be putting these kids in the long run in a situation where they have to maintain that lie.
There's we have to let go of the idea that there's an easy way out. There's a bloodless.
Right.
There isn't, because the
No.
main thing is to stop the harm. So, if you look at the rightly lesser discussed issue of male spaces and the protection of male spaces, which is completely understandable why it's so much less of a conversation. It should be less of a conversation, but there's a viewpoint which says, yeah, let them in. Who cares? Better that than that they go in the female space, particularly if it's a woman who's very masculine, she's got a beard. But the counter to that, there are a number of counters. One of them is about men's sanctity of our spaces. But there's another counter, which is you're just encouraging. It just is going to keep on going, right? Because if your
Yeah.
answer to all of this is, well, okay, fine. So it turns out, maybe the female space does need a bit of protection, but it's fine. The men's space can be a free for all. Like, I get it. But then how do you stop that becoming a validation of this life choice for
But
young
there's
women?
also, I think you're back to that compassion slope. Um, I don't see as much compassion. If I, mom of five boys, if I ever, I've even tweeted this before, like, I also think my boys have the right to um privacy and and a locker room when they're preteens where it's hard enough, like for them to have a young woman who's claiming that she's a man in their locker room, like, but there is not the compassion is not both
No,
ways.
and
There's
it's a
also the reverse of that too, is like a young boy with someone who comes into the locker room that fully passes as a woman. That young boy is going to be self-conscious about that because he does not know, right? Like he's still visually perceiving someone who looks like a woman. I mean, I do feel like men do need their own spaces,
But
and
I
maybe
just think,
men don't need it to be protective, but young boys do.
but I think
well,
that word protection though, isn't there just like, okay, I've heard this with sports or like, well, why do we care about like chess or like badminton, or like a sport? Like, why can't it just be that like people want, their own sex space? Like, I don't
so
even,
this is what Sal Grover said. Is somebody said, "Well, why do you want an app that's only for women?" And her answer was the only valid answer, which is because I want to. Fuck off.
Yeah,
That's the only answer. Anything else, if you premise
yeah,
it, well, because if you look at violence rates, okay, well, then what if you have a group of men who are demonstrably less violent? Does that mean you can't do it? Ultimately, right, we have to have free association. And the only decent answer is the answer Sal Grover gave. I
yeah.
mean, so I live in rural Ireland. There's a swimming pool down the road, which I used to go to. My membership has lapsed. There's a bunch of guys who go and they sit in a sparkle. It's like a giant jacuzzi, can house like 30 people, and they just chill. And they're all in their 60s. They're all called Patrick or Frank, and they all went to school together. And they sit and they chill. And there's kind of one corner of that jacuzzi is like more men, and they talk about like roadworks and sport. And then the women kind of go over there and do whatever it is. And those men, if you told them there's a woman in the changing room and you can't necessarily tell who it is unless you look, but she's actually got certain scars. And bear in mind, men are worse at this, so we don't see the hips and these kinds of things. I just think a lot of those men would stop going. And what are they going to do instead? They're going to go to the pub. Or worse, they're going to go and drink alone at home because that's their socializing. It's, that little group of men, whoever they are, their jobs, and they go and they, go and sit around and so I think it's a different order.
well, but then that contributes. So that's so interesting because then I'm always thinking of what's the downstream effect. So you're saying, the downstream effect is they go to the pub, but the other downstream effect is like you can see how the loss, the erosion of those spaces. It's not just they go to the pub, like they've lost a social connection. Those social connections keep them grounded, keep them away from violence, keep them away from suicide. Like when we actually think about who is the highest risk of suicide, it's actually men in their, like exactly what you're talking about. You're talking
Well,
about like the erosion of community spaces. And that leads right back to, part of what social media, what COVID like drove us into this despair and destruction
yeah,
is,
and I think the problem is that with the men's spaces thing, that it rightly and properly, that with this disaster and kind of emergency of what's going on with women's spaces, that it's never the conversation which is had. But you're right that it's just more atomization, right? It's more desocialization. It's more kind of fraying of all of those bonds.
well, and there's this other thing too. I think so much becomes is, and somebody's probably going to hate me for saying this, but like we judge men's interaction based on women's like standards. Like, okay, so I watched those men go to the hot tub and all they did is sit around and talk about the game and they talked about nothing and they didn't spill their emotional guts and nobody was crying or nobody was talking. They weren't even having a personal conversation. And we downplay that and say, well, then that's not relevant to them. That's not important to them.
Right. And actually, it might be really, yeah, the men aren't necessarily going to send a message saying, I'm really down, I need to talk. The
No,
men,
but the
maybe
thing that
being,
I, but the thing I take from those connections is when you have those kind of setups, even if they are just talking about the game from last night, what I see men take from that is when one of those men doesn't show up for 4 or 5 days, and then they go, "Hey, has anybody seen? We haven't
sorry,
seen him."
that's the,
Somebody picks up the phone and just says, "Hey, we haven't seen you at the pool for
yeah,
a week." Like
yeah.
it, we can't downplay what social connection means to men, just because we're judging it on based on like this other standard. Like I think those spaces for men does still have an importance that like I want my boys to have that um
Well,
growing up.
and I think it's interesting as well because when you talk to women who testosteronized and lived as though male and passed through,
Oh, they will.
and they'll say like, I can't believe how lonely it is being a man, that you can't just walk up to somebody and start a conversation because you can't. Well, you can. I mean, you
But
can, but it's a different way. And for me, like I'm not just a man, but I'm 6'5", so that's kind of, in there as well. So there are some things I'm not going to be able to get from the other angle. But yeah, I think I think I think it's very, very difficult because of these kids of both sexes. It doesn't mean they're horrible people, but they're behaving in a very narcissistic way. It's very me first, and it's very much everyone else is kind of at the bottom of the pile in some sense. And that's how we've got
It'll
here.
costs, and we're all just kind of figuring out how do we deal with this. And I think, like you said, I don't think there's going to be easy answers.
No.
There's no way. And we've made a huge mess.
Yeah, we've made an enormous, enormous mess. And I mean, I think that the first easy answer is
Stop it.
stop,
Yeah,
think
stop it.
about who
Yeah.
you're voting
yes,
for
and
because
but
you know,
and Lauren, like that's so hard though, because I do feel like in some ways like creating a response is like if we're focused on the stopping it, we don't have necessarily the energy or the resources for those. Like I just feel like people ask so much of us, people in this, like how do you balance out what you can do every day?
you can't, can you really? I mean, you can't. I think if
You're
somebody asks
such
you
a
for help,
tragedy.
and you can give a good advice, and you can say, "Well, I'll tell you, like, here's what's always stood me in good stead," and things like this. But I don't. I'm not sure what you can do. I mean, I've been involved behind the scenes more in terms of like funding and branding, which is my thing. Like, how do you brand something so that you get maximum funding so you've actually got something you can do. And I've been behind the scenes with quite a few projects, many of which inevitably don't go anywhere, some of which did go somewhere, to try and help people who have been damaged. And I think it's very, very difficult. Not least because, to my knowledge, there isn't a project which has really taken off and worked, which has been started by somebody who's in that situation. It's been somebody else coming in. That's significant. That's really significant. I mean, I think there's only so much you can do. You know, you've got an awfully big battle that you're still fighting in terms of stopping this continuing for new victims, customers, clients, patients, whatever you want to call them. That's a lot already.
In the last kind of in the little bit we have left, the UK's in the throes of figuring out. I think in some ways the conversation is the UK going to sacrifice this cohort of these kids that they're going to enroll in this research study?
I Okay, well, I mean, the UK government is kind of like somebody nuked a clown factory, and I don't think that it's really possible to answer any questions about, because he could be gone. He'll probably be gone by summer. We've got elections in May, where he is going to do so badly that it will, without question, be that, unless something changes, the worst result that the Labour Party has ever had in its history. So he'll be gone. So then we're dealing with a new prime minister, and in the British system, I don't really know. My guess would be, will they go ahead with this trial? Yes. Public pressure will not stop them. And there's no legal right to a general election until 2029. So, like a lot of things in Britain, the bad news is there may be just nothing that anyone can do until 2029. The good news is everyone involved is going to lose their jobs forever and there won't be a Labour Party anymore. So at the very least, then having said that, the Tories are as culpable for all of this as the Labour Party is, They really are. I mean, they were in power 2010 to 2024. It's not like they, did that much. So, but I think that they will. I think they will go ahead, which is stupid because we don't need this study. We don't need a study into, I saw somebody on Twitter put it very beautifully, like, we don't need a study into whether or not swallowing broken glass will cure your depression. We just don't need that.
Yeah.
We also already have, I mean, the Tavistock was the largest gender clinic on the planet. I believe I'm correct in saying it saw something like 1,500 kids. Something like that. That might have been, it saw at least that many, because that was a number where there was a statistic within that. And those kids are all still out there, presumably, unless some of them are no longer with us. Why not talk to them? Like,
Oh God. So you're telling me in of all of the children who are transitioned in the UK, there's that from the Tavistock is 1,500 kids because
well, I know that
Well, I mean, Lauren, though, I had 1,500 patients.
well, that's what I was just gonna
St.
say. In the
Louis.
United States, because we have to, why do when we can overdo? We have multiple gender clinics in every state doing just as many of interventions
the
times 50.
1,500 number I got because somebody did a piece of research which asked how many of them tragically died by suicide, and the number, and that it was out of 1,500. So it may not be an exhaustive number. But the point still stands. We could just go and contact, like, where are they? Why don't they want to talk to services? Why aren't we using that as data? And if the
Yeah.
answers are, I mean, because there are all sorts of, like, clinical experimental things to that. Like, well, because if you're constructing an experiment from the beginning, you want to do it for fresh and all the rest of it. It's like, yeah, that's a bit weak sauce when we're talking about sterilizing people. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yeah, doing the trial itself is admitting that this is experimental medicine that you've just like
It is.
done for decades.
I mean, I just don't think of much of any of the political leadership in the UK right now, because for clarity, this trial should absolutely not go ahead. There is no excuse for it whatsoever, and never has been. And it's very disappointing to me that, for example, Nigel Farage could just be saying, if we win, we'll jail them. Now, that would be a pitch, right? I don't think that would actually happen. But if he's now leading in the polls, 30% of people are saying they're going to vote for his party. If he came forward and said, you know what, if this trial goes ahead, we're just going to jail the people who did it, it would cause all sorts of mayhem, and I'm sure it couldn't be dealt with very seriously. I don't think people would take it terribly seriously. But it would just be a signal, and it would be standing with the electorate in some way, because it's so clear people don't want this, that I think I don't have a problem with going into kind of an outlandish sort of, do you know what I mean? Equally firework dimensioned response, because we, in all of this, there's just the cowardice of the politicians. In this case, Wes Streeting, Keir Starmer, all pretending
Yeah,
that they don't know. It's really complicated,
yeah.
and it's not really.
We get the same thing over here. Politicians, I think, rely on the fact that people assume that they don't know, but there's been so many people testifying, there's been so much movement on this. They all know at least that it's an issue
Yeah.
and that there's more to it than they have been told.
Well, Streeting's come out today and said Streeting's a gay man, and it's been explained to him as many times as I've had hot dinners. Like,
Yeah.
he knows various people have explained this and mapped it all out, and he's come out and I can't remember, said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable with it." And it's like, if only there was a job of people who could change the law.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. We could put them all in one building. So what they've done is created all of these institutions to try and farm out this stuff. So it does make you think, well, what would Wes Streeting do if the NHS turned around and said, we think that the age of consent is harmful? So we're going to trial, you know, getting rid of it. Would he just do nothing? Would he say, oh, well, I better listen to the experts. I'm a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. The West is plagued with leaders who don't want to ever take responsibility for leading.
It's a great old joke about the French Revolution. Is that the philosopher was sat at his desk writing, and he saw the mob go past the window, and he jumped out into the street and said, "Tell me where you're going, and then I can lead you." And it's like they are so far at the back end of this conversation. Like, you listen to Emily Maitlis, and she's like, "I'm just going to say it. People don't feel free to speak their minds on trans." Welcome to 2021, Emily. They are just so far at the back end of this conversation, and it's going to be very shocking to them to find out, because honestly, I'm not even really remotely interested in changing their minds at this point.
No, and I think what's going to happen is that once this breaks, and the dam will break at some point, people are gonna remember some of these politicians and how they were all in on sex changes for kids.
Well, let's hope that we all remember Gavin Newsom's name, because if he's going to be our front runner for the presidency, let's not let him bury his trans history.
Yeah, or his cruelty. I think the tweet this morning I thought was just cruel, because again, he has had this explained to him. Yeah. He knows it's more complex, and to take a cheap shot like that on someone, I don't care who it is, about the estrangement from their child.
Oh yeah, it's just
was disgusting.
The other thing to say about it is it's a shibboleth. Because why? Why is he like this? Because he's terrified. He's terrified of people throwing paint or animal waste on him. He's terrified of that happening to his office or to his staffers. So if I know that about him, I know why he supports his energy policy too, which is that he's terrified of people throwing paint or dung at him. I know. So then after a while, you realize, okay, all of your policies, where there are very, very heated young activists, you're basically just going, you tell me what to do, right?
Whoa.
Alasdair, we need to have you back on as a guest.
Oh, great.
For sure. I hope you'll accept an invitation if we bring you back on.
Of course I will. You've hardly spoken, my dear boy.
Well, you and I have spoken so often. I think it's great if, yeah, I'm practicing to be an evil overlord stroking the cat
You
on
don't look like
camera.
you're doing very well. You look like you're being eaten.
Yeah, it's a safety mechanism. How can people learn more about what you're
Yeah,
doing
are
at the
you
moment?
jumping back in? Where do we people find you?
No, I wouldn't do any. I mean, where do people find me? I mean, you can find me on X. I'm notoriously bad. I don't really check DMs or do anything. My email is kind of broken because it's
But you
full.
have good spicy tweets.
I have good spicy tweets, so you can follow me on X. So my handle is NGUSDAIR. So you can follow me on X if you'd like to follow me. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if I'll be involved in any more projects. There are things that are going on, and I might, if I'm asked by people I love, then I'll probably say yes.
Oh.
Which
Okay.
is
Well,
how
then
we got into this mess.
we'll ask you again then. We'll have you come back.
Do, do.
Okay.
I'd love that.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It was a good
Thanks for
conversation.
having me.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome back, everyone. This is our second segment of Informed Dissent for Saturday, December the 13th. Today, we're being joined back again with our two co-hosts, Corey Cohn and Lauren Legere, Jamie Reed, but also we have a dad with us today. So Harrison Tinsley is a dad that I had the honor of meeting out in California. Harrison has been a dad that I think a lot of people kind of know of his case, know that he has had a case where he has successfully been able to get custody of his son. But what I wanted to do first, before we get into kind of the depth of the conversation, is Harrison, I want to give you a little chance to kind of give us some background. What happened? How did you end up in a custody case? And where your case is kind of at now.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here and to see you again, even virtually. But my case was, I was dating this girl in the Bay Area, and it was, she has lots of wonderful qualities. There's lots of ups and downs in the relationship, but just a few months into it, she got pregnant, and we were both super hopeful for that. And we were actually both hoping for a boy, which we were both excited when we found that out, even. Believe it or not, it was like we were both stoked. We came up with the name Sawyer, and then it just kind of it seemed like politics really started going crazy at that point. It was like 2018, and I would just like get threatened daily that I wouldn't see Sawyer, because of my political views and different things. And she would say
This
that
was
to me
after
or
he was already
my
born.
mom. No, she's pregnant.
Okay, and you were already having this
Yeah.
conflict. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So she would say it not just to me, even to my mom, my sister, like everyone. She could just constantly
Were
because
these political issues about trans, or were they just in general political issues that she disagreed with?
it was in general, but trans being the main focus. So she would give me like hypothetical, like, oh, what would you do if our kid was trans? And I would
Oh.
say like, oh, I wouldn't probably affirm a delusion, and I'd probably, not go along with that. And once my kid's an adult, they can do whatever. And that made her very upset. There was a time, I mean, she posted when she announced that she was pregnant on Facebook and stuff. And she was like, baby Sawyer due in December. I'll love you whether you're a boy or girl or neither. So, and she left me off the post too, even though we were dating. So that was kind of weird. And it just kind of showed, in my opinion, that there was kind of a premeditated fake trans thing. But yeah, so she about like halfway, maybe 5 months into her pregnancy, she broke up with me, sent me a cease and desist letter from an attorney, and then essentially I was so scared of her like mental health issues that I didn't do anything until he was born. I didn't know when he was born. I found out a week after from someone on social media, one of her friends reached out and sent me a picture, and they're just like, oh, I thought you should know this. And I think it's really messed up that you're not there. And then I don't know, I filed in court 2 months after that. So that was December, and I filed in February. And then it took 13 months of court, like nonstop, just to meet him. So I didn't get to meet him in spite of being like enthusiastic, excited about him the entire time until he was 15 months old. So that was a really weird time. Yeah, it was super painful, but it just made me a stronger man to be a better dad, better fighter for children. It was really crazy to think every night when you lay down, like, oh, I have a son. He doesn't even know that I exist, if that makes sense.
So what happened then? You got joint custody?
Off the bat, I just kind of got like visits and then did visits. And then I moved to the Bay Area, closer to where she was, because I was in Tahoe. And it was probably just a few months after I got visits, March. And then in August, I got, half custody ordered.
So how did it end up that right out the gate you only have visitation and you couldn't see your son for the first 15 months? I mean,
Because
what
they
was
weren't married.
Dads have no rights, weren't married, left off the birth certificate. Very easy. Happens all the
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. I don't know what we could do to fix that. Maybe like paternity test. I don't know. It was a hard time, but thankfully I got through it, and it just like kind of made me able to face adversity more.
Yeah, that's just so shocking because I mean there's so much of a need, especially for sons, to have their fathers around and to right off the bat be able to just kind of take him from you without any.
I don't know how that's not like a crime, to be honest with you,
Yeah, I
but
mean without
yeah,
any kind of reason. That's
yeah,
tragic. Yeah. But so
yeah.
you
I
kept
mean,
you kept fighting for him. You get visitation, and then
half custody.
so he's about 15 months, 2 years at this point.
Half custody, he's like 19 months or something. Yeah,
Okay. And
maybe
then does
18. Yeah.
she?
Start seeing him.
Well, I start seeing him, and then I get the half custody, and then I start seeing him more. And right when I got half custody, that kind of upset her or something like that, and so she started to make up a bunch of lies about me, post them publicly, and just horrendous lies, like the worst lies you could make up about someone, like Brett Kavanaugh, Johnny Depp kind of stuff. And so I was actually, I don't know, I got like every ex-girlfriend of mine to write a letter for me, and I just proved like dates that were completely wrong. Like I was at like a Sharks game and she said I was somewhere doing something. I was like, really? Because here's me at the Sharks game, so that's interesting. Just kind of debunked her whole thing, and it was severe enough, like defamation and harassment. That I got given a temporary restraining order. When I went half custody, she started to pretend he was non-binary. She started to call him they and try to put him in dresses and makeup and things like that.
And
And
he's 2 at this point.
a little younger, but yeah.
Okay. That's insane.
Mhm. I would concur, but yeah, and Sawyer would too. He was never into it. He was always like, you know, I'm a boy, I'm a boy. He would fight with her about it. And so I don't know if that was just something to get at me, but like I said earlier, she did post about it before he was born, even right when she found out she was pregnant. So
Did the court bring in a social worker or a therapist or anything to try to get
Me.
a
I mean, he was so
third point
young.
of view of what's happening?
I mean, I think they were more worried about the other stuff I'm going to get into. Um,
Hmm.
and again, he didn't buy into it. He always knew he was a boy. He'd fight her on it. And basically, the temporary restraining order for defamation of me, non-binary, made up stuff. She got arrested for child endangerment, put on a 5150 while he was with her,
A
and
what?
50.
5150, like an involuntary psych hold.
Oh,
While
Yeah,
she had custody of your
while
2-year-old
he was
son.
with her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that almost didn't even get accepted. I had to do a motion for reconsideration once I got the subpoenaed body cam footage, or that wouldn't even have happened. So that's pretty
Okay.
miraculous.
Okay. We're so far into this right now. I have to just back
Oh no,
up.
there's way more.
I
Yeah.
know. We're
This
gonna
is
get back.
just
We're
insane.
not to
This
winning
is
custody at all.
Okay,
There's
but
just
I just want
multiple
to set up
incidents like
here.
this. Yeah.
You already had to hire an attorney, pay a retainer, right? I mean, I'm
My
assuming.
first attorney, I got the 3-1, actually, thankfully.
Okay. And then
But
you,
half custody, I paid that one.
okay. So you'd
Yeah.
hire an attorney, pay a retainer, and this is kind of consuming your life.
Oh, completely. It was like all I thought about every day, including when I wasn't even with him. So,
Okay. Okay. So then
yeah,
she's experiencing significant mental health issues that are fundamentally kind of challenging her relationship with your child.
that's what it appeared like. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're still splitting custody, you're living in the same town, right?
Different town, more like 45
Okay.
minutes away-ish.
Okay. What happens then in court?
So the big three things I mentioned, the temporary restraining order, arrest, non-binary, and a bunch of other little things like broken orders, which some and lies, and the court seems to never care about those. And for some reason in family court, like people can just perjure themselves without repercussion. But basically, I got a trial with my motion for reconsideration, which was, incredible because it's very rare to get that. And then ended up being a 5-day, it was 4, and then it got extended to 5. I mean, it was kind of I don't usually go into this, but essentially her attorney would object to every single sentence, like me or a police officer would say. So any witness, it was just objection, Your Honor, to every single sentence. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know how that was allowed. But regardless, we got some of our main evidence in, and I was like, there's no way they could, not grant because she's breaking the restraining order and the arrest, all these things. But the court comes back 2 months later, I want to say, and just says like, we're keeping custody 50-50. Court finds that father didn't do the thing she claimed. Court's not going to talk about the non-binary thing. Just we're keeping custody the same, basically. So, that was really devastating. So for that, I did spend an insane amount of money for trial, like insane. For me, it was all my money, all the money my parents would ever give me. So it was a lot.
So then you're given yet again joint custody.
Yeah, they just keep it the same.
Okay. What happens then?
Then I'm out of money and I'm, pretty upset that the court could even do that considering that first arrest was so crazy. And I just started reaching out to people, and for some reason Daily Wire and Matt Walsh wanted my story. So they took it and they did this little investigation, and then it broke my story and it kind of just took off. And that was really cool just because I felt like I became part of something bigger than myself. I started doing like all the podcasts and these movies and going to the Capitol, again, speaking out against 957 or different crazy bills in California. And yeah, it was just like everything aligned after that to me becoming part of the movement to protect kids and parents' rights. And yes, I just did that. There was lots of little court things in between all this next like 2 years of time. And then, I mean, I'm trying to think about what details I'm forgetting during that, but just different things she would fight me over. And then essentially it
Did
came
she
down to
drop the non-binary at any? Did she let it go?
no,
So
No.
was she actively pursuing medical
no,
interventions for, I mean, this
no,
is a young kid, so they're not going
or
to get
not that I
puberty
know of.
blockers. Yeah.
No, he didn't even buy into it. So he would like fight her on it. She would even, she would get mad at me because I think I don't really know, but she like changed to being lesbian and non-binary herself or something during this period too. And yeah, so she would get upset all the time because she'd be like, Sawyer's telling me he's a boy and I'm a girl and it's all your fault. We're fighting. I'm like, okay,
She's fighting
wouldn't
with
admit that
a.
on I wouldn't admit that on the court app if I was you, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Lauren, I think, your mind is just being blown like left and right here.
It takes a lot for a dad to
Well,
lose
I
or
just
to win
can't
custody.
imagine. I can't imagine if the situation were reversed, that if
Oh,
Harrison was the one who got um
never see him
on a
again.
psych hold, and yeah, he'd never there's no way he'd be
Maybe
coming.
I'd see him like every other week for a day or something supervised.
Yeah, you'd have supervised visits or something. I mean, this woman was
Yeah.
arrested. She was put on a psych hold. Where and the kid, presumably, if the kid was with her, the kid then ends up in what? Child services until they find you. If they're taking her in
That's
to
what
be
you
forcibly
that's what
committed.
you well, that's okay. Well, that's something that really upset me, and I did complain to the SF, PD, and I don't know. I have all the body cam footage, so I see them like try to look me up and contact me, but I didn't get like a missed call from them, if I recall correctly, and they ended up just giving him to her parents for that night, and then I picked him up like the next day or the one after that or something for my half custody 3-4-4-3 schedule.
I want to pull this apart and just give me a minute here. So
Okay.
we're talking about a toddler.
Yeah. Less than 2 years old, 20 months or
Okay.
21 months old this
And
time that happened.
I just want to clarify for like, I've raised 5 children now, all boys. Like, this is not a little boy who's like, um, nobody's telling him like, no, you can't pretend like the backpack is a purse for you're playing princess or something for a moment. She was like full on like telling this child
Totally.
that their gender was not like she's telling him you're not a boy or a girl, you're something else,
Something else.
and she's choosing the clothes, and this is like she's directing this.
That's how it seemed to me, yeah.
Okay.
And according to him, he was very against it. And like I said, I've seen some evidence of that. That's pretty solid.
Would she show up for like a visitation exchange and he would be in a dress and
No,
okay. Was
I'd
she
seen
posting
maybe like girly
online?
diapers. Yes.
So she's posting like
Hmm.
pictures of him online though in dresses and
And defamation of me, even just straight
okay. But
online,
this
even
is
calling
but
out the
again,
judge by name. Yeah.
but this is not dress up. Like I went to pick up one of the kid at the
Well, I think she
Y
probably
play.
convinced him it was just that, but go on.
I mean, I went to pick up my kid from the playroom at the Y and he had on like a nurse outfit or something from the dress up corner, and that it's not this. We're not talking about child-led dress up. You're talking more like she's pushing something onto him.
An ideology or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
And she would post about it and talk about it on her own social media. And
Correct.
then at a certain point, she also comes out as being
I
someone,
think she probably did before that, but sometime around that same period, yeah.
okay, as herself being holding a non-binary identity.
Yeah, even and I think she still claims that. But I don't know for sure. I try not to pay too much attention,
Okay.
but she does have a boyfriend, I think, so
When it,
I don't
well,
know.
don't even get me started on that. Um, when it came to court, though, was she making the non-binary thing an issue, or was she trying to
No,
steer clear of that? And were you trying to point out that, hey, she's doing
I
this?
was.
Yeah, okay. But
I
she
was,
was
but she
not
would come to
trying.
court all dressed up to really push that narrative. I mean, the judge at the time was, raised by two dads, I believe, like she was. And I think like the way she got elected, she was an elected judge in SF, was going on like the pro LGBT XYZ whatever thing. So she tried to milk it like in court. She would definitely make her hair weird right before court and stuff like that.
Corey, unmute.
Wait. The judge would make her hair weird.
No. The
No,
mom.
the mom.
Oh. Okay.
The mom's showing up with blue hair with an undercut and dressed like signaling I'm in this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
Say
the
her
Bay Area,
pronouns
that's
before.
not weird though.
I don't know. I think maybe not in SF, but I think it's still kind of weird to most people here.
I,
Like I
I
don't
was
meet
gonna
any
ask.
parents that don't think it's weird. at the park or whatever, even if they're Democrats, they're all like, no, kids shouldn't, and no, guys shouldn't be in girls' sports. Like everyone I meet.
No. We're talking about the blue hair.
I know.
Your son's maternal grandparents. I was going to ask.
Yes.
Normally, grandparents are it's a grandfather and a grandmother, but in this case, it's two grandfathers.
Correct.
There is a grandmother
She was
somewhere,
adopted.
but she's nowhere to be found.
Yeah. No, she's to be found, but I don't want to talk about it too much.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
was going to ask.
She supports me
Yeah.
having custody of Sawyer, just to be clear.
Okay.
My mom.
What about her fathers?
I don't know what they do. What I've been told from people close to her that, think it's better that he's with me is that one of them, just in general, they kind of enable her. They pay all of her attorneys, all these things, pay
Wow.
for all of her charges to get dismissed, everything she does, and like pay her rent, all these things. One of them's like at least somewhat thinks it's weird, like the trans stuff and other things, and then I think the other one's more supportive.
Okay.
I've been told.
So you end up you had a 5-day trial. Do you end up back in another trial?
I have lots of hearings, and then what ends up happening is, like I'm even shooting that movie Identity Crisis. I just thought this was so great just because they're able to end the movie with something positive. But yeah, it was March of last year, so almost 2 years ago. I got a call this time, thankfully, probably because I threatened to sue them so aggressively last time. It was SFPD, and they're like, hey, you need to come pick up your son. So I was just like, okay. And, me and my girlfriend at the time went and picked him up, and I've literally had him ever since. So, but I will say that the court denied my ex parte the very next day after this night. And she was accused, and I've seen the evidence. So, I mean, she ended up getting off on the charges technically, but thankfully CPS were like heroes, and they didn't care like about, what the court said, family court, because they denied my ex parte on the basis of assault and battery and elder abuse. It almost gave her child endangerment. But it was really severe, and she beat up one of her dads, and she over something. She was drunk or something, and they had a really serious physical altercation. She like broke his nose. It was really bad and bit him, all sorts of things. And then my son actually witnessed that, so he like snuck up on it, and what he says is that he snuck up with like a kid's baseball bat, and his mom said, hit him in the face, hit him in the face. And so that's what he did. And then she says that he just did it on his own, which either way, I first of all believe him by far. But even if that was accurate, it's like, who wouldn't just tell a 4-year-old at the time to just run away, or something like that?
Wow.
And so I've seen the evidence from CPS and the police report, and there is a bloodied kid's baseball bat. So I'm fairly certain that is the case. And then thankfully, CPS kept me the temporary have custody for like 4 months or so. And then we got it ordered in dependency or CPS court to give me, full sole legal or sole physical custody and then split legal custody. But I have the final say, just essentially full legal custody. It's not really a difference.
Okay. Along your journey, you start being contacted by other dads.
Oh yeah.
Can you
multiple a week?
Okay, that's so get into
Still.
or try to kind of explain to us what is this is this kind of like the quiet dad network, the dad custody fighting gender network? Like what's going on?
Not always gender, but a lot of them are. And there's like 2 moms I think I've talked to as well, but that's like 2 to like 1,000 probably dads, and a lot of them don't want to bring it up. And I mean, you see what happens if they do bring it up publicly. A lot of them get gag ordered, and they also lose all custody rights. So I don't really blame them for not wanting to come out, some of them.
What does that
And
mean? Be gag ordered?
you can't talk about your, I don't know, your custody case, I think, publicly,
To
something
the
like that.
media, to your friends, anybody?
To like media or social media, I'm pretty sure you could say it to your friends or family in person, maybe. I don't even know though. I've never had one.
So
Jamie might know.
these are dads that are mostly in custody disputes
Oh
that
yeah,
are contacting you and saying, I'm kind of getting bullied in this situation too. And a lot of them are in situations where their ex is supportive or trying to push medicalization or trans identity on their kids.
very much so. I mean, they're even fully like switched their name, switched how they dress. Some of them started in puberty blockers, or I don't know.
How do these
It's
dads
really
find you?
scary. Just on social media,
Okay.
usually.
And then when they reach out that first time, um, I feel like by the time they reach out to somebody like you, they're already in they already in a custody battle. They've already maybe even lost
Right.
visitation. They're already in it. They're already neck deep. Okay, so I know that you referred or helped me get in contact with a case that I worked in a state on the East
That
Coast.
one's that one's gag ordered, right?
Yeah. But so some of these cases, you're absolutely right. Mom's already medicalized kid, the puberty blockers have already been started. Sometimes they're right on the cusp of they want, uh, to switch over to testosterone or something like this. Um, I feel like, and I'm going to try to articulate this well. I feel like
Okay.
every single custody case I have spoken to, the parent, the attorney is giving them this advice, basically saying, well, if your kid really is trans, you're going to go along with this, right? We just have to let the doctors suss out if they're really trans. And then, like, you can't say openly in court, like, trans doesn't exist. Like, they give them this advice, like, are, I mean, like, that's the bulk of the cases I hear is that their attorneys are still under some kind of assumption that trans exists and it's a real medical thing, and that the dad, if they really were diagnosed, should just go along with it. Do you see that in the cases, or are you finally seeing attorneys recognizing?
Most of the attorneys I've had and talked to think that that's insane, even in the Bay Area. I'm sure there's plenty that do that. It sounds like from the dads I've talked to, like the minors council, I didn't have that except for in the last CPS court, and that lady was just fully on board with me having custody, considering everything, as was CPS's attorney and my attorney. So it was kind of like they all just worked together to, like, we didn't have a trial. We actually just got the mom to agree to just sign it to give me custody. So it's a final custody agreement too, which you almost never see. But yeah, so I don't know, but I definitely brought it up myself, and I think that attorneys, regardless of their opinion, have a right, or they have not a right, like they have to represent their client and what their client wants to do. Like they represent murderers and all these things, right? Whether they did it or not. So I don't see why they would insert any bias into something with their client. If their client wants to talk about it, I don't see how they wouldn't be allowed to do that when they're happy to represent murderers and terrorists and all words I don't even want to say.
But in your case, you did not have a guardian ad litem appointed.
Just on the last one, and it was
Okay.
some sort of minors council. I don't know if they called it guardian ad litem or not, but yeah, I mean, but they were just on board, and they just thought it was a clear cut case with the amount of
Okay,
violence
so
and things that
okay.
they didn't care about
They
anything
didn't care
like
about
that.
the other thing. Okay. When the dads reach out to you, what is your response? What do you do?
I mainly say, don't give up no matter what. You have to do everything you can. The money doesn't matter. The cancellation doesn't matter. The enemy you have to be able to look yourself and your kids in the eyes and said that I did everything I could for you, even if you don't win. And I think that you'll be able to live with yourself regardless if you do that, and that you just can't give up and just believe like miracles happen. I did it. I know I'm the lucky one. I never take it for granted. Because people like Adam or all these different friends of mine, I know don't see their kids. So even if my son's throwing a temper tantrum, I just try to think like, wow, what would Adam or Jeff or whoever just do just to have this temper tantrum even. And it's a really weird feeling. Like I almost feel bad sometimes. Like I don't know why I'm the one who gets custody when so many people don't even get to see their kids. So yeah, I mean, I just tell them never give up. It's going to be worth it. I know how stressful it is and how hard it is. I didn't see my son for 15 months. If I got through that, you can get through all the BS you're getting through.
Do you have like a formal group? Do you put them in touch with other dads? Do you try to network them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Dad Army, Our Duty. I mean, I've done a lot with TPUSA. I've done a lot with Gays Against Groomers. I think I'm their token straight guy. One of them told me that yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I think. So yeah, I mean, I try to, if that's what they want. And yeah, I mean, do what we can to support. I mean, I'd say the main thing is it seems really hard. Just family court and for general should be fair to dads, I think. I think that this trans stuff for kids should be just child abuse, similar to like beating your kid or something. And I think probably custody should right off the bat, if someone splits, whether that's divorce or whatever, should be 50-50. And yeah, it just, you know, dads don't have a fair shake in court already. And then you add the trans stuff. I think some of them are starting, moms or whoever's doing it are starting to even use that as a strategy, just not for one to spite the other person, which is common in, divorces or whatever. I'm thankful I wasn't married, but and then also helps sway bias and get custody because they probably know the dad won't go along with that. Just like the attorneys will tell, you brought up attorneys, their clients to make up false allegations all the time in family court because there's no penalty really for perjury. So, I mean, I was lucky enough to get the TRO, but even that, they didn't grant after the trial somehow, even though it was violated. It was violated so much that there was criminal charges, and I got a criminal protective order from my county court, which is a stronger protective order. But the family court still didn't give it to me or on the appeal, which I thought was mind-blowing. Because even on the appeal, we were like, look, we won full custody. He has a criminal protective order. Like, how could you not say that the family court made the wrong decision? But apparently they didn't.
What is the thing that these dads need the most? What's missing?
I think what we need the most is attorneys in family court, without question.
Okay, so
that was my idea was, yeah, to have some sort of group for that.
What do they need do they just need an attorney in general, or do they need a gender-informed attorney? Do we have any?
I don't know. I mean, I would say attorney in general before gender attorney, but both obviously would, or
Yeah,
whatever,
I mean,
maybe expert witness.
It seems like in your case, your kid's mom seems like a crazy person. But like you just alluded to, there are some people that are using the trans thing as a strategy to get custody because if you're, especially you, like you're in California where the affirming parent is always going to be favored. And there are multiple states in our country that are like that. Like there's California, there's Oregon, there's Washington, there's Vermont, there's Maine, there's New York, Illinois. And so if the gender thing even comes up in a custody dispute, any parent who objects at all is already going to lose custody. So now you're seeing fathers being put in a position where they can't actually articulate their argument for why they should even have custody in the first place, because there's already such a bias towards anyone who wants to affirm their kid. And largely it is the mothers. So it seems like a real like legal conundrum, because how do you even argue, like I would agree with you that it is child abuse. But every major medical establishment supports it, and laws in particularly blue states are written around protecting the parent who wants to affirm. So, I'm
Correct.
imagining you're seeing a lot of fathers that are just completely at their wits' end. Like I said, you're actually had an advantage that your ex was crazy. Because if the person in the custody dispute with some of these fathers is not on paper crazy, hasn't been committed, hasn't been arrested, doesn't have restraining orders against them, then it becomes a medical argument.
Yes. And sometimes it also, I don't think that, in Harrison's case with mom being non-binary identified, I don't think that's um uncommon either. I mean, I think there's been other dads that, Lauren, I know you've spoken to other dads. Corey, I think you might have, who mom is also in the LGBTQIA community and is not just pushing the narrative, but then it becomes the narrative in court too. I mean, we've heard horror stories of some of these custody cases with just a level of inappropriateness too, with what's being pushed on the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I
Harrison,
I mean,
your dads need attorneys.
yeah,
Do
well,
you
you see all
think
these.
dads wait to get an attorney? Do you think that they like hem haw and they
No, I think a lot of them use all their money on attorneys and also don't seem to get anywhere. I mean, I know Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill, Protect Children's Innocence Act, which would make it illegal, was on the floor this week. But no, I mean, I think most dads, pay for attorneys until they run out of money or get sick of the system and then start going pro bono. But
Yeah.
first of all, I think, my mom, my son's mom has good qualities too. She's a person, and the line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every human. I believe that. So, she's not like some like monster or something. I just think she has some problems, and it's really sad for Sawyer and for me subsequently. But yeah, attorneys for sure. I think that, in my case, like when they were trying to pass 957, I talked to the author of the bill. It's on video. And I said it to Scott Wiener in the committee too, but I was like, if my son says he's a boy and I say he's a boy, and his mom's trying to say, against him that he's non-binary, I'm the affirming parent, right? And I would get custody from your bill. And they said, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be the first one to win custody then because your bill. And then thankfully Newsom vetoed the bill. I don't believe it would have actually worked like that. But you
Yeah.
can catch them on the reality of their bill. Like, I think there has to be, even if you believed that, like, because I have plenty of trans people be like, I'm trans, but that's horrible. What, like, your son's mom's doing, she's making it seem like we're all crazy. And, like when that's not the case, like when it's being forced upon the kid. And I would say any young kid obviously is having it forced upon them because they would never come up with that. They just biologically know. Like Sawyer knew even when he was 2, like every sex of every person, even a cartoon, accurately, like with 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
what are you doing from here? Like, where do you go from here?
And we keep fighting, we keep speaking up. We try to get a group of like a nonprofit to get attorneys that are going to step up and fight in family court, because all the big attorney firms, all of which do amazing work, whether it's Alliance Defending Freedom or Pacific Justice, Harmeet Dillon's office, Liberty Counsel, like they do these amazing things, but none of them want to touch family court. And I don't blame them because it's not a real court. That's another thing about it. There's no innocent until proven guilty. There's no jury. So it really doesn't follow the Magna Carta or what our legal system was based on at all. It's very odd. But yeah, I just would like to see, I had an idea of a nonprofit that would have attorneys that were willing to step up for hopefully we could raise money and then the dads, couple moms, probably hundreds, thousands of dads are going to sign up. And there is a couple moms I've talked to, believe it or not, and they're going to maybe get help legally with some good attorneys, whether they're gender experts or just know that that's wrong. I mean, ideally, obviously, I think you could make the correlation that anyone who would push that idea on a 1 or 2-year-old, 0-year-old has mental health issues. And yeah, I mean, ideally, it would just be classified as child abuse.
Yeah. So I guess in some of these states, really, that there's a necessity to kind of change some of these laws, because if we don't change some of these laws, some of these dads are never going to get a fair shake. And it doesn't matter how good their attorney is if they can't even argue the merits of the case because the law is so biased to affirming parents. That's really very sad.
It is tragic. And I'd say like the judges really, because in family court, it's just so much up to the judge. So it kind of depends on the judge you get.
And the
Like
bias of the judge and the built-in belief structure of the judge.
Yeah.
Right, but judges are supposed to be completely neutral, regardless of what they believe, towards everything they rule on. That's clearly not the case always, but that's how it's supposed to be.
Harrison, where can our listeners and then other parents find you? So you're on social media. Where are you at?
I'm on like all social media, pretty
Okay.
much. Just Harrison Tinsley, you'll find me. I'll probably be the first one.
Okay.
And I'm
And
happy to
then you
talk to anyone
said
who needs help.
you mentioned Dad Army. Where is Dad
Dad
Army?
Army. They're on social media, Dad Army,
Okay.
Instagram, everything, or reach out to me. Same with Our Duty. Um, I'm sure your guys' group would talk to people, Gays Against Groomers, I know well, and I'm sure many, many more too that I'm forgetting. But we're happy to help, and I just do the best I can to encourage people. And it's really hard, obviously, but you can't give up on your kids. I mean, there's some things in life that you just have a full-on duty to do, and I think all of us as adults and parents and stuff have a responsibility to step up and protect the most innocent. So especially children, and then likewise with like the girls sports trophies being taken.
Yeah.
I just think it's something that most Americans, both those two things, like most Americans agree on fully. So I don't know why we're still debating it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you, a pleasure to see you, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Save the kids.
Before we close, I want to say a sincere thank you to Harrison and Alasdair for today's conversations. We're really grateful for your time, sharing your story, and your willingness to engage on some personal ground. Looking ahead, we're planning something for next week that is a bit hard. It's not a debate per se, but an advocate for pediatric gender transitions has agreed to pop over and speak with us. We're not entirely sure how this is going to go. We think it matters. We think it's worth trying. So sometimes we're going to step into these conversations with our fingers crossed and our intentions clear. A quick reminder, we will be taking a break the week of Father Christmas. This is a great time to go back and re-listen to a favorite episode or one where you thought that my hair looked especially atrocious. We won't be recording then. Even some dissent needs to pause at least 1 week out of the year. As always, we'd love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, share this podcast. Drop a comment. Let us know who you'd like us to talk to next or who we should be talking about. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And as always, stay informed and ready to dissent.